Yeah,
Is that
yeah, hopefully, yeah.
Yeah. Can you change that not live to live, Hannah?
Yeah, I'll do it as soon as it comes up on my page.
Okay, okay.
We can see Councillor Dixon, by the way. He's not hiding.
My phone.
It's by creeping in on the floor now. One can see him.
Sorry, excuse me.
I can now confirm that the stream is live, Chair, and the meeting is being recorded.
Thank you, Tom. So, opening the meeting. So, welcome, councillors and union representatives, to this live stream meeting of the Union Employee Consultation Committee at Bolsover District Council. This is a public meeting being streamed live to YouTube and via the council's website. If for any reason the public can no longer hear or see the meeting over the live stream, we will adjourn the meeting until the connection has been re-established. The meeting is also being recorded. Can the facilitator please confirm who is in remote attendance at this meeting?
Thank you, Chair. I will just go through the people who are in a remote attendance on this committee. When I read out your name, could you please tell us your title, the ward you represent, and confirm that you can see and hear me as well, please. First of all, Chris McKinney.
Yes, here. Thank you, Tom.
I'm
a union representative.
Can you see and hear me okay, Chair?
Yes, I can.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Jane Bryson.
Councillor Jane Bryson, representing South Normanton West Ward. Yes, I can see and hear everything okay.
Councillor Derek Adams.
Derek Adams, Bolsover South Ward, councillor. Yes, I can see and hear you. Everything's okay, fine.
Councillor Tom Kirkham.
Councillor Tom Kirkham, Alt Hucknall Ward. I can see and hear everything okay.
Thank you. Councillor Maxine Dixon.
Unmute.
Unmute your microphone, please, Councillor Dixon.
Yeah. Councillor Maxine Dixon, representing Balborough and Clown North.
Can you see and hear me okay, Councillor Dixon?
I can, thank you.
Thank you. We also have a meeting room set up which has the portfolio holder Mary Dooley, Sarah Gordon, HR manager, and Lee Hickin, the head of paid service. And in addition to that, we also have remotely myself, Tom Scott, Governance Officer, Alison Bluff, Governance Officer, and Liz Robinson, Governance and Unison. Thank you, Chair. And Kevin Shillito from Unison as well, sorry.
Thank you, Tom, thank you. So now I will hand actually back to Tom as a facilitator to explain some of the procedures for the meeting.
Thank you, Chair. Before we start the meeting, members are reminded of the meeting etiquette that has been circulated to them. All members should have their microphones off during the meeting unless you wish to speak and have been called on. Members attending remotely, please leave your cameras on during the meeting. Also, for remote members to request to speak, please use the chat function to type speak or raise your hand on camera. The Chair will then call on you to speak during the discussion debate. When a vote is to be taken, this will be by a show of hands. For those attending remotely, please ensure your hand is visible on camera. If any member is disconnected from the meeting, please try to rejoin as quickly as possible. If you have any technical difficulties, please contact one of the support officers assigned to this meeting in my email to you. If you're about to speak, the meeting will wait a few moments for you to rejoin. Chair, I'll now hand back to you to start the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. So I'll now begin the agenda. Our first item on the agenda is apologies for absence. Can I ask if there are any apologies for today?
I've received no apologies, Chair.
Thank you, Alison. Therefore, I'll move on to item 2. So urgent items of business. I have no urgent items for today's meeting. I believe that's that. So item 3. So declarations of interest. So as per usual practice, could I ask if there are any declarations to be made for today's meeting?
It's nobody, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you for confirming that. So item 4, the minutes. Starting on page 4 of the agenda pack, and we have the minutes from the 6th of Feb 2020 for approval. I'd like to move these as a true and accurate record of the meeting. Could I have a seconder, please?
I'm happy to second that.
And Councillor Dixon.
Can I just add that minute number 0613 dated, it says 26th of September 2020.
That's true, actually, and I think the same for 614, isn't it? A future meeting as well. So I take it those dates should actually relate to 2019. Is that?
Yes, Chair, I'll make those changes.
So with that change, I see actually there's a hand up in the meeting room. Lee.
Councillor Mary Dewledge just wants to make a comment, if that's okay.
Yeah, of course.
Chris, on page 6, the draft organisational policies were mileage related travel expenses. It was a long time coming, but we did get the right decision in the end.
Yes. Yes, thank you, Councillor Dooley. Yes, it was. It does seem quite some time ago now, doesn't it? But it is. Again, it was. I think we eventually found a way to work together and bring it forward to a kind of satisfactory resolution. So thank you again for raising that, Councillor Dooley. If there are no other comments on the minutes. I think I did have a seconder, but I didn't quite catch it. Could they again raise their hand or say that?
That was me, Chair.
Thank you, Kev. All in favour?
That's everybody, Chair.
Excellent, thank you. So next item on the agenda is item 5, the sickness absence report for the Q1, so April to June this year. And we have Sarah Gordon to present this report. Sarah, would you like to begin, please?
Chair, sorry to interrupt. Councillor Maxine Dixon's got her hand up to speak.
Thank you.
If I could just say that we didn't all agree because both Jane, Councillor Bryson and myself I think chose to abstain as we weren't present at the previous meeting.
Councillor Bryson, is that
Yes.
Yes.
Yes, I'm new to this. This is my first meeting, yes. So
Yeah.
I abstain.
It's not an issue, Chair, but if the two members would like me to record their abstention in the minutes, that's fine.
Yes, please.
I think that's
That
what
was-
they're
thank
asking
you.
for.
Yeah.
If you could do that, please, Alison. Yes, thank you. So on that basis, Sarah, if you're able to please begin your report.
Hello, hopefully everybody can hear me. I'm Sarah Gordon, the HR and OD manager at Bolsover District Council, and a regular standing item on this agenda is the sickness absence information. We just look at the quarter information, and we are due to produce the next quarter information in the next couple of weeks or so. Sorry, can you not hear me?
It's a bit quiet, yes, I'm afraid.
Is that better?
Yes, yes. Well, for me at least.
Okay, so if you've been at page 10 in your packs.
Sarah.
We're all right to carry on, or to it?
For me, I think, was it Alison? Did you? Sorry.
Chair, your screen froze.
Okay.
Yes, Sarah's moved around in the meeting room, so I think we may be able to hear her better now.
Okay, thank you. So the average number of days lost during April to June was 1.5 days. So this is less we've seen during that period of time in terms of Q1. Normally we do see around 2 or just under 2 days absence per employee during this quarter. So it's interesting to see that during the period at the beginning of lockdown, we did see a reduced level of sickness absence. In terms of table 2, that just shows a breakdown between long and short-term sickness absence. And as you'll see, there has been a significant reduction there in the number of short-term sickness absence cases during that period of time. Table 3 just provides information in terms of the number of cases there, and as you can see, there was 48 short-term cases and 15 long-term cases. Just turn over the page onto page 12. Table 4 just shows you a breakdown per service area of the services proportionally experiencing the highest levels of absence, and table 5 shows you the service areas experiencing the lowest levels of sickness absence. On table 5 on page 13, we have a breakdown there of the reasons for sickness absence over those periods and historically as well, just so that we can see if there are any patterns or trends emerging. So as you can see, during the first quarter, stress depression was the highest reason for sickness absence, followed by other, and then headaches and migraines. So there are certain categories that we have to place sickness absence into, and as you can see, that is summarised on that table in terms of the reasons for sickness absence over those previous quarters and the current quarter that we're looking at today. On to page 14 and 15, what you have there is a breakdown per service area for the quarter. So it just provides the information in terms of the short-term days absence experience, the number of employees that were absent, and the corresponding information for long-term absences as well. And then at the end of that column, you have the average days lost per full-time equivalent employee. So that's just if you'd like to look in more detail regarding specific service areas within the council in terms of sickness absence. Over the page onto 16 and 17, what you'll see there is information regarding employees who do work for Bolsover District Council, but North East Derbyshire is a host organisation. That's been requested previously, particularly for environmental health and ICT. So you've got the sickness absence figure in there for those service areas. And then figure 2 shows the breakdown per directorates. So this does look different again in comparison to previous sickness absence information that's been produced because the directorates have changed. So we've put those into place from the 1st of April, just so that if we are comparing information moving forward, we are looking at similar comparable information. And you just have a breakdown there per directorate. And as you can see, some directorates have significantly more employees in than others, but that's just the nature of the services within those areas. So that's just in there for the information. And you have the reasons for absence as well listed within those directorates. So I'm happy. Oh, sorry, Mary. Happy to take any questions.
Yes. And so thank you, Sarah. So Mary, please, so you have a question.
It's on page 17 and it's on COVID related symptoms. Have we had any COVID, actual COVID members of our staff off with COVID?
We have had during that quarter, April to June, there were no confirmed cases at that point in time. A lot of people were experiencing symptoms, but then also we had some employees struggling to get a test at the relevant times. There's a certain period of times when you start displaying symptoms that you've got to get a test. But they did seem to put some more robust things in place in terms of the testing, which made it easier. I mean, at the beginning of the lockdown period, we as the employer had to put forward somebody for a test. Now individuals can make those arrangements themselves, although over the last week or so there's been a big struggle with employees getting tests.
It's been a big struggle
Nationally.
Yes.
Yeah. But we have had some employees test positive, not necessarily displaying any symptoms either. But yes, not very many. at all. So it's difficult for employees to know whether over the summer we have a lot of people suffering from allergies.
Yeah.
So they might have had a sore throat, felt cold and were coughing and things, but some of that was just due to things like hay fever and other things as well. But because the symptoms overlap with COVID, it has been an interesting time to try and
What departments then, Zara, have they been off with COVID?
Well, in terms of the breakdown there, you can see it's within the Environment and Enforcement Directorate that we've seen more people displaying the symptoms. But again, it's not been very many at all. We've tended to see some in housing.
Right,
Yes.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, for it. I can see Councillor Kirkham has raised a hand for ask a question. And I also have a question as well, but I'll let Councillor Kirkham go first.
Thanks, Chair. Councillor Kirkham, Although Ward. It's just related to COVID. Some workplaces have started doing workplace testing due to the issues in getting a test from national test centres. Is that something that Bolsover are considering for the staff who have to come into the office? I think some of them can be done by blood, which has got a result within about 30 minutes.
It's not something that we have explored at the moment. There was a testing facility on site week before last, which staff were offered the opportunity to go to. But there would, if we were doing things like blood tests, there would have to be very strict procedures and things in place. And I don't know whether, in terms of volume of numbers coming into the office, whether it would be worthwhile the council actually investing in doing that, because there's so few numbers actually coming into the building at present. But it is something we can look at moving forward if we feel that it will be appropriate.
Okay, thank you.
So my question, I think I'll answer and I'll see if there's any other questions to be asked. Is it possible, or does the breakdown operate on a basis of workplace or office space? Because whilst the directorates is quite a neat way of presenting it, it doesn't quite fit with, in terms of thinking of tracking and tracing and all that kind of thing, actually by office space or workplace, that might be more useful, or it'd be additionally useful to have. So does that breakdown exist yet, or could it in future?
Yeah, we were regularly producing that information to senior management team and recording the symptoms. What we find in those potentially displaying COVID-19 and then taking appropriate measures. So we are getting that information in on a regular basis. We've asked managers to fill in SF1s, the sickness form, sorry, for those that aren't used to dealing with those. Even if somebody is fit for work but displaying symptoms or is having to self-isolate. So all that information is being collected and collated. So we could provide a summary for the next UECC meeting and wherever possible break that down by workplace. That is becoming a bit more tricky with a lot of people working from home, and it would just be where they generally go to. But more teams are now going on to kind of rota arrangements and having, more regular contact with the office rather than just being solely at home. So that is something that we can have a look at moving forward in terms of providing that summary in a way that's useful for this meeting as well.
Thank you. So yeah, I guess it is trying to break it down in the correct way that's the most useful, isn't it? And it's, I guess, as an employer, the number of cases of people who are coming into the office or have been coming into the office is going to be more useful rather than people who've solidly been working at home and have it in a kind of a home setting. That's probably less risk to the organisation and how it manages its workspaces. So yeah, if thought can be given to how that is presented, I mean, again, we're entering, based on the national data, quite a big peak again. In slightly different manifestation, it would appear, but we're going up at this point in time. So it will be useful, particularly at this time when there's more people trying to come back into the office as well. So it's just if some thought can be given to how that can be communicated, I think is I mean whether through this report it would seem sensible, but then obviously these meetings are relatively infrequent, so you'll have other ways of communicating that out to informing health and safety issues and things. So before I seek a member to move the report, are there any other questions? Okay, thank you. So Councillor Bryson has put a hand up after Kev Shillito, so I'll take them in that order. So Kevin, please answer your question or ask your question.
Thank you, Chair. A couple of questions. The first one of which is the old chestnut about stress and depression. I know the term a significant proportion is not work related. That suggests some is work related. I'm just wondering how big a proportion that is, whether it's up, down, steady, and what's being done about that. And that's my first question, Chair.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it is a fairly steady picture. There has been some challenges as a result of the recent situation. We do have some employees, not necessarily absent as well, suffering from mental health issues due to having been at home for prolonged periods of time. And if an individual does live alone, it has been quite isolating for them as well. So that's something that we've been working with managers on a regular basis. But in terms of overall, in relation to this report, it is a steady picture at the moment. But what I would like to do is look at the next quarter's information, which we should have in the next 3 weeks, just to see how the events since April have impacted on the stress and depression cases as well, and whether those that were in place prior to the lockdown have continued and how they've been managed during this period, because we've had to use different ways of working with individuals. And you know, previously we'd be having face-to-face occupational health appointments and counselling sessions, and everything's having to be done over the phone or via Zoom, and that does present you know, a different way of trying to help and assist employees as well, and want to see how effective that has been as well. So yeah, sorry, in answer to your question, Kevin, it's a steady picture at the moment, but I would like to look at the next quarter figures as well, just to gauge how things are going, because I think it's something that we do need to keep an eye on at the moment.
Thanks for that, Sarah. And I'm more than happy to see how that picture develops. The second issue that I wanted to raise is there's reference on page 14 to SAMPT having established a home working group. I suppose the first question is, can you tell us a bit more about the work that's doing?
Do you want to cover this as well, or do you want me to?
I'll come in on that.
Okay, I'll let Lee speak.
Stay there.
Thank you, Sarah. And just for the record, Councillor Dooley, I've noticed your hand raised, so I will take your question after Councillor Bryson's. But back to Lee.
Press.
Can everybody hear me?
Mm-hmm.
I can.
So I'll pick this one up, Kevin. It's something I was going to pick up on a later agenda item, but we may as well cover it now. There has been a home working subgroup established that we want to invite the unions along to be a part of. It started a little bit informally and organically, falling out of the recovery plan. So there's 3 pieces of work really that are going to intersect with each other during early October. The first one of those is the recovery plan. So the recovery plan is a document that contains our actions and proposals following the initial response phase. So the recovery plan includes things like measures to ensure that we're controlling our finances as an organisation. We've had some tough times, and I know you will have heard in some reports, medium-term financial plans and such like. It also involves things around, as a starting point, people working from home and making sure that people have got all the right equipment in order to do so. Where that's not possible, or people are not productive through no fault of their own and therefore need to come in, dependent on the job, etc., it's been about getting the workplace COVID secure and safe. So you'll have seen some of those measures for certain meetings and things like that. We've got similar measures across all office workplace settings. It then covers areas such as, well, what are we doing in our own individual service areas about planning for future service delivery? What has the impact of this new world had upon how we deliver our services? Which then leads into wider sort of strategy and policy review to support the new way of working and the new approach. Within there as well, there's big things around income streams linked to the financial position. So things like our leisure, we've seen a dramatic decrease in leisure-related income, which puts pressure on us. But equally, we've been using those staffing resources in different and more creative ways. Thankfully, the return back to leisure is being managed really well, in line with all national guidance and UK active sort of guidance, which is one of the kind of governing and guiding bodies. So we are seeing people come back, but that is a moving feast and nobody really knows what's going to happen, should there be a second wave, etc. So that's the first bit, that's the recovery planning bit. And the home working subgroup came out of the recovery plan work. So that's a group of officers who'd got some experience in the past and other people who have got relevant experience today. We established a small working group to start having a look at what are some of the barriers to working at home for people who are working at home. What are the things we can do better to make it better, and things of that nature. Capturing all the benefits generated by working at home and remotely, because there's been a lot. Climate change has been a big winner, but there are other things that aren't as positive, unfortunately. This group are trying to capture the downsides to working at home as well. So I had 2 weeks at home throughout this period, quarantining, and I looked at it myself, specifically looking at the downsides, because the upsides are well documented. The downsides are a little bit more subtle in my view. And I certainly recognise from my own perspective that there's a risk and a danger of missing out on the things that being with people bring forward, like your own personal development, your own social and mental well-being. But I don't think I'll give you one example of a very specific issue that's still present today. So one employee who I met probably 10 years ago, I became aware of their situation and some of the challenges they had, really through observation, and then felt the need to ask, and they were happy to talk to me. And I've been in contact with them for 10 years on this very subject, just really being a bit of a listening ear for that person. And they were in the very worst frame of mind you can imagine at that time. And I just wonder, you know, we've got to think about things like that when it comes to remote and home working, things that I would never have spotted that in this day and age. And that person would never have been so brave as to have that conversation, perhaps. I don't know. These are the subtle things, the downsides to working home, and we have to accept and acknowledge them. It's really important that the unions are involved in that meeting, and it's not that they were not involved right from the start on purpose or anything like that. It started out with a very small nucleus of 2 people, which grew to 3 people, and then actually this ought to be a group, and then now we're at the point where we invite the unions. So I'm definitely extending that invite to the unions to be part of that process. The third bit of work that's going to intersect is the work that we're undertaking now called service plans, which are effectively, in the private sector, you'd call them your business plans. But these are service plans in terms of how each service is laying out how they're going to deliver their service for the coming year, coming years. Taking into account the current situation of COVID, etc., etc., the service plans map out the ambitions of the service area, how it aligns to council ambition, what resources they've got to deliver that, how they're going to deploy those resources, any future needs they may have, any challenges, issues and barriers. So all these 3 pieces of work are kind of intersecting in and around October. Falling out of that I hope we can create directorate plans. So a directorate plan which contains the services within it, a quick and easy, if you like, overview of all that work culminating in one place, which says it'll go down to the detail of such as, I don't know, let's just put one out here, revenues and benefits. We think to deliver our service in the future, we need to be, all our team need to be present 1 week in 3, but never all of us together at once, things of that nature. In order to do that, we need 10 workstations, but we need 30 home working workstations, and quantifying that. That's just a very simple example. When you follow that through with all the service areas, I think we get a good idea of how we have changed, having taken into account the pros and cons, people's feelings, the needs of the business, the needs of the individual, and hopefully we'll have some sort of blueprint for what we're going to do moving forward. Obviously, it's a changing world, and that'll have to be a dynamic thing. But in a very big nutshell, I think that's it. I don't know if that answers your question, Kevin.
It's a very comprehensive answer, so thank you for that, Lee. Well, the only observations I'd make is that it clearly raises a number of issues that cross over with my recent discussions with the health and safety team and the facilities team about making the office work for staff. So obviously I'd welcome our involvement in that group going forward. So thank you.
So I have thankfully made notes of who's raised hands at times. So Councillor Bryson, can you?
It's fine, thank you. Lee has more or less answered what my question was about the workspaces and everything. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. And Councillor Dooley, I believe you wanted to raise something.
It's a comment really. I've been coming in quite often over these last 3 months, and the measures that everyone's put in place to keep me safe and everybody else has been excellent. I was taken round the leisure before we reopened, like we did, and all the places that the officer had put in place was absolutely spot on to make this place as safe as possible for people that's coming to use our leisure services, the directors and the members of staff. I take my hat off to you for doing what you've done. So as a member, thank you so much, because I feel as safe here as what I do at home. So thank you.
Well, I think we welcome that kind of positive comments, and I'd echo that kind of how that initial setup of how the office was, looked at, risk assessment done. That was again, to my eyes, very impressive, and I think we'd welcome that. I do have questions about how it's been monitored, but maybe that's something we pick up in. I know we've dealt with a lot of the COVID situation, and a discussion about it and impact on workforce, which is actually the next item. So I think unless there's any specific questions about Sarah's report, I will seek a mover and a seconder for that. And then we'll move on to item 6, and we'll have whatever left of discussion. Moved by, thank you.
I'll move that, I'll second it.
So I think we have a mover, seconder. So, and could the facilitator confirm who is in favour, please?
Tom,
I think.
Everybody in favour, Chair.
Brilliant, thank you. So item 6 on the agenda, again, discussion regarding COVID-19 and the impact on workforce. Now we've begun that discussion, I imagine. If it doesn't exactly say who wants to, who actually raised it, but I'll offer the meeting room the first dibs on, again, what this verbal item is intended to, go on. So Sarah, please take it away.
Thank you. Yeah, I just asked for this item to be included on the agenda just to receive feedback as well, but just wanted to give some reassurance that during the last few months, we have put in place a range of arrangements, yes, to accommodate all the different scenarios and circumstances that we've come across during this period of time. And it has been challenging to keep on top of all the government guidance. It changes very quickly, and respond to the situations the staff and the services are experiencing as well. So overall, we've had very positive feedback both from managers and staff members in terms of the communication and contact and that engagement that has taken place during this period of time, because we've had to change our working practices and arrangements really, really quickly, and everybody's been really good at adapting to those and working flexibly with it. So there has been pros and cons, as there is with everything, but it's just to give reassurance that we are going to keep looking at reviewing those as well, because so we put the temporary workplace measures in place back in March, and then we did some updates over the course of June, in July and August as well. But those were, when we put them in place back in March, it was thought that they would be for the short term. But now we're looking at things being in place for several months, well into next year potentially. So what we are going to be doing in the next couple of weeks or so is reviewing those and seeing what things we need to put in place for the medium to longer term to make sure that things do work on a practical basis, and we are doing everything that we should do in accordance with the legislation and guidance to ensure the workplace is COVID secure, and we're providing all the support to staff in terms of their well-being as well, so that we are working more safely within the organisation and got that ability to respond to different situations that occur. We have, over the last 3 weeks, asked staff if they would like any flu jabs. I just wanted to make you aware that it was said by the government that over 50s will get their flu jabs from their GP. However, we have had a number of employees concerned about that, because I think the over 50s will be given a flu jab after the over 70s, those that are vulnerable, and after the over 60s. So we're not quite sure when that would actually happen. So what we will be doing is offering flu jabs to any employee that wishes to have them, because it will provide that reassurance to that staff member as well, and hopefully help in terms of their well-being and attendance at work as well. So that will be happening in the next few weeks or so. It's a normal process whether we'll get the voucher and be able to have the flu jab wherever they like. But I just wanted to give that reassurance that we are offering it out to all employees. But happy to take any feedback or any questions, or happy to have a further discussion regarding the arrangements in place.
Noticed Kevin's hand up. So again, because this is a discussion, open it up to members and to union reps to raise points, ask questions. So Kevin, as the first person with your hand up, please take the floor.
Thank you, Chair. I want to preface anything else I say by warmly endorsing the last few months and everything that's been done to support staff. I think the measures have on the whole been really positive, really well received, and from my own personal point of view, it's great that there are clear reasons and explanations there, that when my members come to me with questions or concerns, generally I can explain things, even the stuff they may not be happy with, but I can actually explain it and get them on board with why things are being done. And of course, we've been regularly consulted at various stages, so I'm grateful for that too. There's a handful of small issues I thought I'd just raise as questions that have been brought to me recently. One of which, and I think this might tie into the home working group in particular, is that there have now been 2 surveys on home working, and as so far the staff haven't seen the outcomes of either of those surveys. So I'm intrigued as to when we might find out what that's revealed. A The second issue is there is one around risk assessments, but I suspect that's probably better saved for safety committee later on. I've been asked whether or not greater guidance could be given on things like informal meetings and team meetings, because I think there's an inconsistency in terms of whether that should be done in the office, online, how that ought to be managed. And I think that some managers and teams are dealing with that differently to others. So perhaps some consistent guidance would be helpful. And the third issue is obviously people who went through periods of self-isolation, some whom couldn't work at home. There have been some knock-on consequences on their annual leave. I've been chased by a number of staff in the last 2 or 3 weeks who are desperately wanting to know how much leave they've got for the second half of the year. And they're pulling their hair out because they aren't getting any clear answers yet on how much they've got left. So can that be made a priority, please? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Kev. Is there any points you want to come back on there from the meeting room? Both of you? Excellent.
Yeah. Just to aid my really poor memory, I'm going to pick up the last point first, if that's all right. Kevin, appreciate and acknowledge that situation. You know, in terms of equity, equality, fairness, whatever the right word might be, it's been a bit of a minefield through this period, and throughout we've always tried to do the right thing. We've put a temporary hold on the arrangements for. Can you still hear me, by the way? I've just got a signal come up on the screen. Yeah. So we've put a temporary hold on those effects on annual leave whilst we dissect and have a look at it a little bit further, because you know there'll be people who there's certain categories of people throughout this period that have been affected in different ways differently, and we just want to have another look at that. There'll be people, first of all, who've been told actually you've not got a place of work, can you go home and just sit tight? There are certainly a number of those in leisure, for instance. There's not a leisure centre to operate from. There are others who throughout that time were redirected onto other things. So if I stick with the leisure theme, many of the leisure staff went on to deliver food parcels in the community and things like that. There are others who've been shielded, again through no fault of their own, in line with government guidance and the shielding guidance. And then there's been others for their own reasons, and I'm not saying they're any worse, any better or anything else, but for reasons that fall outside of those other categories, who felt they can't be at work. And trying to wade through that and trying to understand the impact on the organisation financially, because I'm not saying money comes first, it absolutely doesn't, but we have to balance the interests of the organisation, particularly in the time that we've had. We know we've got a difficult time ahead financially as well. So in the initial arrangements, it was always the intention that where people were choosing to be at home and not work, and because they didn't have the ability, etc., that would be offset to some degree by a reduced proportion of annual leave because they were unavailable to work for a period during the year. As a result of that situation, that flows through, that would affect annual leave. But we've got some refinement to do to that, and you know, I've got to hold my hands up and say that's what we've got to do. It's not a finished article just yet, and we ask staff to please be patient. We sent a communication out yesterday, and we spoke to service managers at the Service Managers Forum yesterday, and explained that we do need to work through it. But we do accept there are issues. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's fine. It was just if people are self-isolating for the shorter period, the 14 days, there is no intention at this stage to have any impact on annual leave. It was just the longer term isolators or shielders at this stage that were being looked at. But the self-isolation is a movable feast at this stage. It's changed from self-isolating for 14 days now to 10 days if you are the individual having to self-isolate, and then the rest of the family have to self-isolate for 14 days. And So that's going to be looked at as part of the review measures in the next 2 weeks, particularly now the schools have gone back. Over this last 3 days, we've had so many queries regarding that, with school children being sent home, and the situations there and how we're going to manage that, the circumstances that employees are put in as a result of that. Just coming back on one of the home working surveys, the one I can comment on is one where we asked about employee setup and displaying screen equipment setup they've got at home. The information came back into the HR team, collated, and then that was sent out back to managers, and managers also got a copy of the information that the employees filled in directly. So we asked managers to have a conversation with their staff regarding that, particularly if there were any issues being flagged up. So what I will do, Kevin, is just send a message round to managers to make sure those conversations have taken place, because we recognise that if somebody is working at home for a significant period of time, how their desk setup and arrangements will have a major impact on their well-being as well. So we need to make sure that they are all correct and in place. So that's something that we are working with managers on, to make sure those conversations are taking place.
Can I just jump back in at that point? Because I know Sarah's told you half the answer to that question about surveys. The other survey, which is part and parcel of the recovery work, really, we're trying to establish how productive people have been, what issues they've had. That information's feeding into that subgroup, Kevin, that we've invited Union along to as of today. Sarah's going to send the invites to the meetings, but that will ultimately inform those things that I said that are intersecting in October, where so it's all the background work, the foundations to what it is that we're going to be saying and presenting. But there's absolutely no problem with us sharing that with staff now. There's nothing in there to hide. It was quite remarkable, actually, and very interesting to see that managers and heads of service had, in many cases, suggested increased productivity. So, you know, it's very open and honest, and various tiers. I mean, you don't just rely on one individual saying, yes, I'm loads more productive. When you follow that through with other, like their line manager and heads of service, etc., then you know, that's what we've done through that survey. So it is interesting reading. I think at the stage when it was done, this is what we've got to be guarded against, and coming back to the points I made earlier, at the stage when it was done, we're in a bit of a honeymoon period, i.e. it felt good and we were focusing on all the reasons why it worked. And that's great, because we need to capture them and maintain them and try and harness them. But I think it was a bit too early, personally, to understand what long-term working from home does to an individual and the impact it has eventually on the organisation. We've just got to have one eye on that. Capture all the great stuff, but be aware of the negatives and try and put things in place to soften those negatives up.
Yeah, and if I'm all right to comment on the third item, I think, not the risk assessments bit, the informal meetings.
Please, Sarah.
Check with managers. Yeah, I'll check with managers again on that for you, Kevin, just to make sure that those discussions in team meetings are taking place, and how and what format those team meetings are taking place in as well. So we'll do some guidance, as you suggest, for managers, just in terms of best practice, and I'll send a copy through to you guys to have a look at as well, in case you want to add anything in based on the feedback you've received from staff as well.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thanks.
Kevin, do you want to come back in on any of those?
I appreciate all that feedback. There's nothing really that I need to add. I'm grateful that some communication's gone out about the holidays issue, because I think that the key thing is making sure staff know why there's a delay and that they are, you know, they haven't been forgotten about. As for everything else, I'm grateful for the responses, so thank you. And I probably should have picked my words more carefully. I was talking particularly about shielding and furlough. I wasn't looking particularly at the short-term self-isolation when it comes to holidays, but lesson learned.
Don't worry, Kevin. It's all this terminology keeps changing every minute. So don't worry, we've had the same issues myself.
Thank you.
Are there any other comments from members on that? I've got one final one, but before, does anyone wish to make any more points? Lee?
I don't mean to hog the airtime, and it's not related to that, but it's another point that I won't mind adding. Like you've got a final point. Could I have a final point?
Yes, I guess. Yeah, no problem. It means obviously today we have the safety committee kind of in half an hour or so's time, and there's some obviously overlaps in this. I'm conscious that the issues around the monitoring and the risk assessments is more appropriate for the safety committee, but I'm also aware that the membership on the UECC and the safety are not 100% aligned. And so some of the members today in this meeting may want to raise comments about that aspect, and they won't obviously be at the safety committee to do so. So I just wanted to raise that as a final opportunity for particularly the elected members who won't be in the safety committee to raise issues around the health and safety that we can then talk about or discuss with health and safety representatives in half an hour's time or so. So is there any member kind of points around that, or for the union, I guess, as well? No? Okay, so Lee, your final point.
Yeah, I don't know whether you're going to be happy about this or sad, seeing as you've already offered yourselves up to attend the home working subgroup. I would like to extend another offer to be part of another group that we're establishing to look at job evaluation. Obviously, it's critical that you're involved in that, and you're very integral to it now. Yes. So for a while, I've had my own issues with the job evaluation scheme over the years, and frustrations and things of that nature, and I think other people have too. But it doesn't belong to a person, it doesn't belong to a team, it belongs to the council, and it's the council's scheme. So it's the council's responsibility for putting it right if it doesn't work. Having said that, I was around when this scheme was first envisaged and imagined, and it was one of the first things I was dropped into, to be honest, in about 2005-06, when it was first being discussed, and we had all sorts of consultants in from all over the place. Very lengthy, very difficult process, very challenging, a lot of impact on people at that time. And I personally wouldn't want to go through all of that again. So rather than throwing the baby out with the bathwater, we've been looking sort of behind the scenes at what is it that makes the job evaluation scheme not work as well as it could. So I want to establish this group so that we can collectively put some of those bits right. Some of that work might include having another look at the local conventions, because anybody who's used to using those will recognise they've been around a while, may not be the best examples, the way in terms of how the local conventions read, depending on which factor you're looking at, they're not always aligned, so you're having to go into another factor to find an example of it. It's a bit like that, and it's a bit, if I can be honest, over this period of time, because such a long period of time has elapsed, obviously people have come and go who take part in that, and some elements, if I'm being absolutely honest, I don't recognise from the scheme that I remember going through the process a lot in the early days. And that's nobody's fault. It's just an organic thing. I know the people involved in job evaluation are doing the best that they can do, but it's doing the best that they can do with the scheme we've got. So the purpose of that group is to let's have a look. Let's not throw the baby out with the bathwater. Let's see if we can improve it. So are the unions happy to be involved in that meeting? And I'll send the meeting invite out.
Kevin, I saw your hand up first, and Liz too. So Kev, come in.
My concerns and issues with the job evaluation scheme, I think, in various different forums have been made fairly clear. So I welcome the group, I welcome the project, and welcome any involvement that we can have in that. Thanks.
Liz, would like to add anything? So Liz, your hand went up. Is there anything that you want to add further, or?
No, I just wanted to echo what Kev said. That was all. Thank you very much. Welcome to join the group. Thank you.
Thank you. So, yes, so Lee, you have willing volunteers.
Expect an invite in the next week-ish.
Fair enough. I take it the people taking the notes of this have caught all of that. I believe, unless there are any further points on that item, Mary, Councillor Dooley, please.
Yeah, I mean, I've been involved in job evaluation in my previous life and involved with the outcome of Bolsover's JE. And I'm glad to hear that it's going to be looked at, because there is one or two flaws in it. And so I'd like to see member involvement as well on job evaluation. So not saying that it will be me, but I like member involvement as well, Lee.
Absolutely. Keep portfolio holder, sorry, Chair, if I can.
Yes.
Portfolio holder in the responsible is Councillor McGregor. So
yeah, and he's well equipped for yes.
And he's not shy, so
no,
he'll definitely be involved, and I've had this conversation with him already.
And again, I think I understand where that's come up. It's slightly off the agenda, so something that's not probably to be formally discussed here. But thank you. In terms of, I think that brings the that now concludes the business of the meeting. So can I thank members and officers for their attendance today, and to the public with us on YouTube, thank you for watching. I shall now close the meeting and ask for the live stream to be ended.